Hey everybody, Mrs. Bianchi. A newborn hedgehog weighs 1/3 of a pound. At 5 months, the hedgehog weighs 1 pound. How many times its original weight is the 5-month-old hedgehog? So let's map this out, and then we're going to use a strategy called solve a simpler problem that might help us to figure out what to do. So we know that it's 1/3 of a pound when it's a newborn. So that means that it would weigh this amount right here, 1/3 of a pound. Now, at 5 months, it's going to weigh the full pound. Now, remember, that's 3/3 of a pound. So let me draw a separate line to show that. This is at 5 months. All right, so let's make sure we understand what they're asking. They want to know how many times its original weight is the 5-month-old hedgehog. So in other words, what do we have to do to this number here, as far as multiplying, to get this number? Now, I just want to review a strategy called solve a simpler problem, because let's just for a moment pretend that these are whole numbers. Let's pretend that this is 1, this is 2, and this is 3, and that we're not dealing with fractions. So if we had this value, which is 1, let me write that down, 1, and we want to know what do we have to multiply with that to get this value, which at 5 months would be 3, I'm pretty sure you'd be able to tell me what you'd have to do there, right? How would I get this number? Well, you can see that it would be 3. Now, how would I get that? What would I have to do to get 3? Because if this was a variable, we would think of this as 1 times n, right? We would think of it as 1 times n. So let me just erase that and put n. And we'd say, what's the opposite of multiply n by 1? It would be to divide by 1, right? And this would all cancel out. And we would get 3 divided by 1 is 3, right? So we would get 3. Now, let's apply that same thinking to what we're dealing with here, because here we have 1/3, and we have to take 1/3 and multiply it by some number to get the 3/3, which remember is also equal to 1. But let's write it as 3/3 because that might actually help some of you to think what's going on here. Now, when we're solving and we have fractions, when we're solving equations with fractions, what do? We actually, to show that we're actually dividing, we actually multiply by the reciprocal of the coefficient, which would be this. So whatever's being multiplied with the variable, we're really dividing by it. And to show that, we show multiplying by the reciprocal because that's the same thing as dividing. So if I just flip this around, put the 3 on top and the 1 on the bottom, this blue value is the reciprocal of this value. Whatever you do to one side of the equation, recall you have to do that to the other side of the equation. So I'm going to put that same blue value over here. Now, I want to remind everybody what happens when you multiply something by its reciprocal. It all kind of, simplifies to being equal to 1, right? So I can show you all that. But 1 times n is going to give you n. So now the only thing we have to do here is we just have to simplify this and figure out which one of these choices it is. So let's take advantage of the fact that we can simplify here. Divide by 3, get 1. Divide by 3 and get 1. And 3 times 1 would be 3. 1 times 1 would be 1. And 3 divided by 1 would still give us 3. Now keep in mind, we could have just quite simply thought of this thing as 3 instead of 3 over 1. And we could have simply thought of this as 1. So if I kind of rewrite what this is equal to above it, just to show you that this is equal to 1, and remember this is equal to 3. And if we did 1 times 3, we would still get the 3 that we have. So hopefully you see that we're going to be going with this choice right here, and hopefully you understand that strategy of solve a simpler problem, because sometimes when you solve a simpler problem, and erase the purple numbers because that was just to help us think about what to do. This red line is 3 times greater than the blue line.